Okay, we're live and people are coming in. So apologies everyone for the late start. We just had a few technological problems there for a second, but we've got them all sorted. So thank you so much for bearing with us. I want to welcome you to this talk today and thank our speaker for being here with us. And just a reminder that there will be a bit of time for question and answers at the end, so please do submit them into the Q&A box. But in the interest of getting going, I would like to introduce our speaker. We have Dr. Maria Filipa Castanera with us today. Maria has a BSc in Marine Biology and Biotechnology, an MSc in Aquaculture and Fisheries, specialised in aquaculture, and a PhD in Biological Sciences, specialising in marine biology. And she's going to be talking to us today about how to ensure good welfare practices in the aquaculture industry. So without further ado, I will pass over to Maria.
So thank you so much for introducing me, and thank you so much to invite me to be present at this conference at this today. So I hope that my presentation is a bit better than the technical problems that I had before to share my screen. And yes, so today I hope that I can pass some message to you about how to ensure good welfare practices in the aquaculture industry. So I hope that my presentation is quite practical, so just giving to you some examples about what we can improve during the rearing conditions, taking in consideration that we have different species and the different requirements that we need to fill according to distant systems that we may have according to different species. So, wow, what's happened? Now I cannot move my screen. So we continue with technical problems, and I'm not able to move the slides.
Oh, if you click the space bar, does that work?
This one, yeah.
Okay. There we go.
I was just trying to be creative. Sorry. Okay, so I would like to start going back to the basis, and maybe when you see this figure, you are wondering, but why this is there? What is the point to put something about carbon footprint and fish welfare together? But according to my perspective, and this is something that I want to highlight at the beginning of this presentation, is that it's true that increasing in meat consumption it's something that is happened now during nowadays, and the red meat especially is fueling the global warming. So, and all the people are talking about this at the moment. So, in order to meet the protein demand and of a growing population, seafood must be part of the solution. And if you think about seafood comparing to the other animals, we can see in this figure, I have it there, that the carbon footprint for farmed salmon, in this case, comparing to the other land animals, it's quite low. But all this comes together with fish welfare. So if you think about fish welfare as a way to promote sustainability and in the way that we handle the fish, we can put this together, thinking about welfare as the last worst things that can happen when we have bad welfare is mortalities. So if you have higher mortalities, you will have a higher carbon footprint. So if you have a good welfare during your farming conditions with your fish, you will have a lower carbon footprint. So even if you don't care about fish welfare, that I think that is not the point at this conference, if you think just about sustainability and about carbon footprint, you can consider aquaculture as a good way to taking together with welfare to reduce the impact that you have in the environment. Now, of course, that yesterday we had a lot of definitions about animal welfare, and I want to highlight the point that animal welfare is quite a generic word comparing to fish welfare, and because the terms of welfare is quite broad, and we had different terminologies related with fish welfare that are not wrong or are not better ones than the other ones. But the things I would like to use, the definition that I would like to use today is related to the operational definition that was made by Donald Broom in 1991. In this definition, the concepts and measurements of fish welfare are quite practicable. The concepts are related with farm environment that can impact welfare, with practical measures that could be an instrument to support the good welfare, and parameters that may be used as operational welfare indicators. These indicators can be measured, and they can be part of the conditions of the farm, like can be used in some operations like transport or slaughter that may have a negative impact on the fish that can be measurable. Taking in consideration this broad definition, we can clearly understand that mammals and livestock represent a less diverse group if you look onto the fish group. And humans have a kind of a way to generalize groups of animals outside the mammals. For example, when we talk about pigs or cows, we try to differentiate pigs and cows, and we don't talk just about animals. But when we talk about fish, we talk about all the single species. And we need to consider, and we need to take in mind that we talk about several different species with distinct physiology and distinct environments. And we can talk, when we talk about fish, we can talk about a sardine, or we can talk about a sea bream, that it's a species completely different. So we don't have a single rule that we can adapt to all the group of fish. So this needs to be species specific, and this is the point that I want to highlight here. So now we can talk a bit about the fish welfare in general, how to promote fish welfare. And the 5 freedoms was originally defined by the UK Farm Animal Welfare Council in 1960. And of course that was consequently updated, and fish, that is the big forgotten ones, was just included around the 80s. It's not easier to apply these concepts of welfare to all the animals, but it's possible, and it's not possible. And if we think that, oh, but the fish are inside the water and we cannot attend all the fish at the same time, and they have different requirements and they are different species. But anyway, it's possible, and it's already accepted that fish welfare can be measured using and improve it using these 5 freedoms for animal welfare. Of course, that we need to rely on several operational indicators for fish welfare, and that producers are able to measure the welfare status of the stock, and needs to be species specific, as I told you before. I was trying to find a figure with the fish included in the 5 freedoms for animals, but yeah, I was not able to find it. So maybe someone that is good in design, they can build one of these 5 freedoms figure with the fish. Because as you see, we have a lot of animals there, but the fish is not. And I was searching quite a lot. So, but fish welfare nowadays is much more than these 5 freedoms. We are wondering about to promote positive mental states for the fish. We want also to promote appropriate environmental features for the fish. And as an example, we can talk about the accompanying fish, like the rice fish that Lars was speaking before, the cleaning fish that requires some shelters inside the salmon cages in order for this fish to rest and to avoid some tides and currents. So we need to provide also some positive environments and features. Also, fish welfare nowadays is also about opportunities for choices. So fish can be able to choose in an environment if they want to have less or more social interactions, for example, in social species. Also, it's quite important, and this is quite a positive promotion of states in fish welfare, the signalization of some positives or some negatives also events. For example, the noise of the feeders before the feed is being delivered in the sea cages, for example. So the fish can be used to hear some noise during first seconds before the feed starts to be delivered. And this promotes quite a positive feeling, I would say, in the fish. And this needs to be taken also in consideration when we talk about fish welfare. So now I propose during the next slides, I will go in a bit in every single requirement of fish welfare, and with this extension about the quality of life and to promote positive features for the fish when they are in rearing conditions. And I will just deconstruct a bit and just to highlight some new tools that we can use and can be used and to improve fish welfare nowadays. So the first one we can talk about, the adequate nutrition. So we need to think about that we have so many animals, so many fish in this case, in intensive productions, that we need to fulfill nutritional requirements in order to have an adequate feed formulation. We need to think about the environmental impact of the feed on the environment. And this is different if we talk about sea cages or if we go for RAS systems or if you go for example, for a pond. We need to combine also the behavioral response of the fish, because if you are planning to have the adequate feed for a soul, it's quite different if you want to have a pellet that is adapted for a sea bream. So we need to think about distinct behavioral responses in feeding behavior. And you need to think about economic, because we need to have a feed that is possible, you know, in terms of economic for the farmers to buy the feed to give to the fish, but also to have some profitability at the end. So taking in consideration this fact, I want to highlight several automatic feeding systems that can be used nowadays, and we have different ones, as you can see in these figures. So all of them are independent of manpower, and this is quite important, and this is what I want to highlight here, that we're using automation for feeding in fish. In this case, we are allowed to have a standardized protocol, and like this we can deliver the meals at the same time constantly, and we don't need to have an operator taking care of this, because the operators are responsible for several things that are happening at the day on the farm or at the system. It protects the work, and also the worker can be used to do other things that are quite necessary. For example, just clean some tanks or just do some health checks and things like that. The automation can be easily associated also to some data collection, so you can be sure how much feed you are delivering per minute or per second. And this is also good to be analyzed in the future for many different purposes. So in this case, the use of automatic feeding system is also important because you can avoid cannibalism, because you have constant delivering of the feed. You will have in principle less dispersion and a better growth rate. You can optimize the feed conversion rate, so you will have better growth. You can reduce stress, so because during feeding times fish are less stressed, so you will have less disease and less mortalities, and you will reduce the costs for cleaning, because the feeding protocol is much more optimized. In addition, some of these automatic feeding systems comes together with some early alarm systems, because they have a software that can differentiate some difference in behavior that can be used to check if something is going wrong with the fish. As another welfare need that is according to the 5 freedoms that I said before, we can talk about the appropriate water quality, and we need to take in consideration that distinct dairy systems have distinct critical environmental parameters. And as an example, in open water system, it's quite important to control the solvent oxygen, to control the temperature control. You cannot control the temperature, but to measure the temperature, turbidity, and wind direction to understand if your fish are able to get the feed that you are planning or not, and which direction the wind is going also. But if you go to recirculation aquaculture systems, you have other critical environmental parameters that you need to take in consideration. And in a closed system, it's much more important, and we don't have more or less important parameters, but you need to take in consideration another environmental parameters, for example, the pH or the ammonia or nitrates and nitrates, that are things that you are not able to control, and they are not important in open water system. In addition, you need to think also that you have distinct species and distinct needs. And also you can have distinct water sources, because some systems are running with the groundwater, another ones with surface water, and in another ones you cannot control at all the water, like the seepages. So you are dependent of the environmental conditions. So this is something that needs to be taken in consideration about the water quality. And in terms of monitoring the water quality, that it's one point that it's quite important for the fish farms, and needs to be monitored or at least checked all the time. You have in this figure different submerged probes that can be used and can be sent some notifications. We can be set some parameters there, and some systems, especially the inland facilities, they have the capacity to auto-correct the problem. So, for example, if the hypoxia, if you are in a situation of hypoxia, we can correct the value by bubbling some air or some oxygen inside the system. If you are in low temperatures, and you can just correct this by warming up the water. And in addition, these systems are stored, so you can have access to historical data that can be used in the future. For example, to understand something about the stock management that you need to change, or that you need to improve. And also, it's good to have a comparison from stock to stock according to the water quality parameters. Another point that it's quite important, and Lars was talking about this, is about health. And fish welfare is much more than health, and as you can see it, and health is the third point here in my talk, and we'll have much more. But it's quite important to have a strong health plan implemented at the farm. And the basis of a good veterinary health plan is to have something about the biosecurity, to have some notes about husbandry, like feeding strategies, environmental control, stocking densities, for example, and some procedures for handling. So you need to standardize the operation. So it's good that you have this inside the veterinary health plan. You need to have some control for disease and diagnostic. You need to be in check of mortalities values. You need to be aware about vaccines that you can be used to control some disease, about prophylactic treatments. And you need to be aware about health checks that you need to do, even if they are not mandatory, but they will prevent some issues at the early stages in your farm. Another treat that needs to be included and can be prevented is about the predator control. So what you can do to protect your fish for some predators that you have around your cage or your system. This can be included also some pest control in inland farms. And it's quite important also to have staff training. So you need to think about to train the team, and this should be included also in the veterinary health plan. So the veterinary health plan will be work as a kind of prevention to have health issues in your farm. So it's quite important that the farmer have access to a vet and to or a health specialist as they need it. So they need to have someone around when it is necessary. It's quite important also to review this veterinary health plan. So this is not static. So it's important to determine key performance indicators. And as the fish are living organisms, this veterinary health plan will be alive also. So this needs to be updated and check it at least, I would think, annually. So this is some examples how to ensure or how to prevent some issues in your farm. So in order to have a good health of the stock, as an example, I put here some gill scores that, of course, that it is handling of the fish, but as Lars said before, so some handling, it's better than reach conditions that you are not able to solve anymore. And these gill scores are quite important to check early stages of AGD disease, for example. And in addition, you have also these mandatory counts for sea lice that it's better to have it, that reach one point that you are not able to do anything else than cull the fish. Also, it's important to know if you have some vaccines available to use against some disease or some prophylactic treatments. And this is what I want to tell you about health. In terms of behavior, in terms of freedom to express normal behavior, the fish should be allowed to have appropriated space and move as they want. So they must have facilities adequate to the species, and also in social species is quite important to maintain social interactions. Nowadays we have several video systems that allow not only to monitor the behavior per se, such as swimming behavior or feeding behavior, but can be also be used to check the available space in a cage, for example, to detect some abnormal situations. Can be used also to some estimations in biomass or biometrics, and this is quite good tools that we have nowadays. In addition, I put here also some hydroacoustics as an example of this that can be used to monitor fish behavior. As an example of this, I put the cage eye, that is a quite efficient and sustainable way for fish farming that is using hydroacoustic and machine learning to monitor fish movements and fish behavior, to observe and to provide some objective measures according to the fish appetite. That is quite important for feeding operations, but it's also important for better welfare and increased growth rates and feed conversion ratio also. Another example there is the high-tech fish farming. I never saw this in practice. I think this never, we don't have any one of these high-tech farms yet. This is one idea that was run by a big group of salmonid producers, and the iFarm system aims to assess each individual fish, taking in consideration the facial, not expressions, but some facial points that are different from fish to fish, and they will determine using these different facial expressions, the grow and the presence of parasites and the presence of disease associated to this. Another point that it's important during the aquaculture rearing conditions and that we need to consider if you want to improve welfare in aquaculture industry is try to avoid stressful conditions. Of course, that's some of them are unavoidable and we cannot do anything about, but it's good to provide to the fish some protection, to provide to the fish some safety, and this can be done using some conspecifics also. I will not go in detail about environmental enrichment because my colleague Pablo will talk about this in the next talk. But this is something that we need to take in consideration, and doesn't need to be some physical structures. We can use like water currents or things like that. We need to try to avoid injuries when we handle the fish. So to avoid some pain in the fish, to avoid some downgrading quality also, because if you have fish injured, at the end we'll have a less quality on the product. You need to avoid stress on your fish, and you can also be creative and try to make the facilities less boring for the fish. Of course, that negative experience are difficult to avoid during rearing conditions, and here you have a lot of handling, as you see in the first image, some sea bream that needs to be graded. And the idea here is not just eliminate the handling procedures, because this will be impossible, but is try to minimize the times that you need to handle the fish. So you need to consider, and you need to think about this as a plan, using the fish as a benefit to have this practice, not the other way around. In terms of crowding, you should avoid overcrowding, and at the end you will have more disease if you overcrowd the fish. So you need to take in consideration that crowding less the fish, maybe you will take more time, but at the end you will have a better quality and less stress and a better welfare. In terms of vulnerability to predators, you need to consider that you have predators around your farm and it's impossible to avoid them, but you can use some mechanisms in order to protect the fish. In terms of escapees, that this is something that can happen, and probably your fish are not prepared to be on the wild because they are not used to catch feed, or they are not used to have predators around. In addition, it's also some evidence that this can be some treat for wild populations. And also in terms of transport, you need to check before transportation if you have the fish in good conditions to be transported, if you are able to maintain the water quality during the transportation, and also in relation to slaughter, because slaughter, of course, that it's involved is something that you cannot avoid during the rearing conditions, because this is the end of the life of the animal and that's it. But you can slaughter the fish with using stunning methods before kill the fish, and you can use percussive stunning or electrical stunning depending of the fish and the conditions that you have. So, and now comes this part of positive experience. And I know that Becca Franks was talking about this yesterday, that it's impossible to talk about welfare without talking about positive experience also. And I don't want here to separate positive from negative experience, but it's something that we need to take in consideration, is that we are responsible to promote positive experience also during the rearing conditions. in the systems. As an example, we have also some studies related with the condition preference place, so we can use some places that fish prefer, and maybe this is quite easiest to do in aquaculture rearing conditions to motivate and to promote some positive experience for the fish. Also, we can give some rewards to the fish just using some feed or some cost specifics and promote to them some positive experience. Also, fish are quite a good species to work under motivation. So if you motivate your fish to promote a specific job or something like this, you are able to have maybe a better growth rate, and also less problems during or health problems during the rearing conditions. It's also understandable now that nowadays fish also like to play, and we can just promote some environmental structures for fish to play and to have some access to some positive experience during the rearing conditions process. In terms of production system, and this I referred before, so the welfare of farmed fish needs to be different according to production systems, and we cannot put on the same side, or you cannot use the same measurements if you work about flow-through systems, or if you work in a raceway, or if you work in a RAS system or in a pond, because the production systems are different, so the welfare requirements are different also. And now more practical assess of welfare in fish. So we can use welfare indicators that can be observable and measurable in order to provide animal welfare needs for the fish that we have in hands. This can be operational welfare indicators that are some indicators that are realistic and the farmers can use on day-by-day basis, that can be based in animal or can be based in environment. But there is not a single recipe, so we need to take in consideration that we have live animals that are different from each other, we have different species, and we need to work according to the rearing systems and the species that we have. So according to my perspective, a way to obtain the plenitude and the optimal state of welfare, of course, that you will lose several operational welfare indicators, and I put some of them here, but we have much more than this. But you need to take in consideration specific needs. You need to take in consideration production systems, and you need to take in consideration that you need to train the team or the people that are running the farms in order to reach the optimal levels. And this is not the easiest task, of course, but this is a learning process and needs to be quite constructive. In terms of new tools that can be used to access fish welfare, I consider, and also my team are considering this because we are involved in one project that I will talk a bit in the next slide, that certification schemes can be a tool for assess fish welfare. It's true, and you can see in this figure, that this figure is not mine, but in the next slide we'll have the reference if you want to go in detail on the paper about this. That it's true that according to this figure, the conventional aquaculture, it's much more than the certified aquaculture. So you have 93.7% of conventional aquaculture, and you have 6.3% of certified aquaculture. But what we can do here, is try to implement more certification in aquaculture, and so just minimize this part of conventional aquaculture in order to allow the access to more farmers to be certified, and also implement some fish welfare inside the certification schemes. And we have a lot of schemes there. And as you can see, the global gap, for example, is just representing 3% of the certified aquaculture. So if you go in detail in every one of these certification schemes, and if we can include there some welfare requirements, this is a big improvement in fish welfare conditions in the certified aquacultures, of course. So, and there you can see that from this percentage, that is quite low, 56% are salmonids. So we need to think about some strategies to put some certification schemes in other species. That it will be quite important for farming for the other farmer species. We have also a good example here in salmonids that is related with the ERAS PCA that is recognized as the only scheme in Europe dedicated to farm animal welfare. So the Freedom Food Certification Scheme of the RSCPA in the UK is a very good example of a welfare standard that has been built in one farm dialogue with producers, which is available for salmonid species. But maybe this is just the starting point, and we have there. I will not say something more about the Carefish project, because I think my colleague João was talking about the Carefish project yesterday. But I want to highlight the fact that we have a project that we run with Friends of the Sea, and we was able to provide to Friends of the Sea 25 different species with requirements to be implemented in the Friends of the Sea certification scheme. So we can use this approach to other certification schemes in order to implement their fish welfare as a mandatory, as a core standards. So another thing that can be used as a tool, and this is there since many years, so it is not something that is new, is risk assessment in fish welfare. So you can use the normal WhatsApp programs and just taking in consideration hazard analysis and control measures and critical points, and points that needs to be we should have particular attention, and put some limits on there as an indicators in this specific case for animal welfare. And this is quite important because we can control much more easiest, and we will have standardized operational procedures inside every specific rearing site, because this will be adapted to every site. And this is something that is not new. We just need to adapt. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel, you know. So it's just we have this already implemented risk assessment, for example, for environment. So what is the impact of the environment around the farm? So what is the impact that we have if you have a farm around? So why we cannot use this to improve fish welfare? So, and this is another tool that I consider that it's quite important and needs to be explored in the future. So as a summary of my presentation, so we saw a lot of welfare concerns in farmed fish, and this is true. So we have many species, many production systems, many welfare issues, but I see that the transformation of aquaculture sector is being quite good so far, because we have an increase in automation, we have an increase in health checks, we have an increase in rearing systems. And I see an improve in aquaculture conditions, because if you compare the aquaculture to livestock, for example, farms that are much more whole than aquaculture, you can see that in short time we have a lot of improvements. And the thing is that every time that I'm going to visit one farm, I'm facing in front with some new technology, and normally quite good for fish welfare. Of course, that this needs to be behind of efficient management, because people needs to be responsible for the fish that they have in the hands. Then it needs to be associated to welfare assessment measurements. And, to run a farm, you need to plan, you need to prevent, you need to motivate the teams, you need to train the teams. And as I said before, the new tools can be used to improve fish welfare, like new certification schemes or actual certification schemes with welfare requirements as a core criteria. And in the future, I hope that more companies, and maybe this will be mandatory, to have a risk assessment in fish welfare in several companies. And yeah, that's it. So I hope that I was able to pass my message. And yeah, I will be much more than happy to reply to some questions.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Maria. That was a really informative presentation, and so good to hear not only the ways that we can reduce suffering for fish, but also some ways to ensure positive welfare as well.
Yeah.
I will dive straight into the questions, as we have got a bit of time to take some. So the first one: how practical is it to promote positive experiences, such as the examples that you gave, in a big aquaculture with sea cages?
I think that you are able all the time, if you think about out of the box, you are able to promote some positive experience to the fish. So you can hand fish your fish sometimes, just for the fish to be used to some handling, for example, or you can just give some signals to the fish, just putting some lights or things like that before handling procedures, for example. And I think that this is just minimal things for the operators that can be done, and will be a big improvement at the end in the fish. So you don't need to go to very elaborated structures, or just very complex experiments that normally you have in research facilities. But you can take some points from there and just try to apply to bigger cage or big conditions, and that's it.
Thank you. The next question: is there any scientific collaboration in aquaculture welfare research between Western institutions and Asian institutions, so China, India, Southeast Asia, for example?
Yeah, this is a very good question, and it's really a big difference if we go to Asia and if we see rearing conditions in Europe. And it's true that will be better if we have much more collaboration than what we have at the moment. I can tell you that one of the parts of the Carefish project is to promote some consultancy work in farms around outside Europe. So, and we'll focus in South America in this case. But I know that it's some other NGOs working in Asia, just trying to talk with farmers about how to improve fish welfare in farming conditions in Asia. That sometimes is not easy for them to understand, but for us it's quite simple, because maybe they never heard about this. So, and they never associate this as improvement in the quality of the product. So we need to be careful, and of course that you cannot go there with very complex and the fundamental claims, but you need to just show to them how easy it is just to measure some water parameters, just use some ice when you're handling sometimes the fish, just simple things, just check your fish, this is quite important, just go there and just see the fish at least once per day. And these things are quite simple, and doesn't need to be a very change in the farm. So they just need to understand, if they do this, they will have better product, and they will have less disease and less problems in the future.
Great, thank you. Our next question is: I'd love to hear more about training producers. What are some of the key things producers should be trained in, and how viable is it to bring training to producers at a large scale?
Yes, depends of the countries, of course, and depends of the farms also. But normally, big producers, they have implemented training according to fish welfare, and this is quite a core implementation in the farm. So they have access to vets, and the part of vets, not just health, they need to understand the behavior of the fish. They need to understand how the fish will behave according to several and distinct situations. They know about fish biology, about pain, about stress. And of course that in big companies, they have much more access to this. And it's easiest to understand this because so if you go to salmon industry, I'm sure that every single farmer knows about fish welfare, and they have appropriate training inside the companies. Sometimes this is just in-house training, so you have someone that is responsible to promote the training. But another times they just go to external sources, and it's already available a lot of fish welfare trainings that are quite good. So in Fish at Obase, we'll run one of the trainings about fish welfare. We did it last year, so if someone is interested this year, we'll have it again. Will be a remote training because of this situation, of course, but it's something that we'll do it in a way that we think that it's quite practicable and quite applicable for the different species. And so I think that is something that maybe you need to check out. And yeah.
Thanks, Maria. Should we focus on migration measures, since conventional aquaculture has no certification schemes, rather than starting with introducing positive welfare? Or do you think both of them could be pursued side by side, sort of from a feasibility standpoint?
So in terms of conventional aquaculture, this is true. So we don't have so much certification scheme. So, but the way that I see this, in order to implement in more companies, I see this in three lines. So I see the way that you put this in legislation. So this is mandatory, and you need to do this on the fish. And if you not do it, you are not able to have this farm. You need to do it as a training. So, and this needs to be mandatory also, at least in terms of general procedures of the farm. It's a good practice to have this training. Okay, so it's not by law, but it's a good practice to have this. And in the other thing is another tool that you can use is related with certification schemes. Of course, that they are not open to every single farm, and we need to distinguish some markets according to the certification schemes. But the idea is to open this to more farmers. Even if you have small farmers, you can use these certification schemes like as a cooperative of farmers, that they put all of them together, and they need to have the certification scheme, and they will be run it in these specific conditions. The problem now is that I saw a lot of certification scheme claiming that they include fish welfare inside the schemes, and at the end you just see health there because you just have a veterinary health plan and that's it. And this is much more than this. So you need to observe much more requirements than just to have a veterinary health plan and to have a good health.
Thank you. As for some health checks, handling is impossible to avoid. So are anaesthetic drugs used to sedate or calm the fish in this process as a routine procedure in aquaculture?
Yes, they are used as a routine procedure, and it's quite mandatory to use it as a routine procedure. So when they do, like, for example, the lice checks in salmonids that need to be done weekly, they need to anesthetize the fish in order to fish don't be so stressful. Also, if you use vaccines, you need to anesthetize the fish also before. And yeah, you just need to take in consideration the drop product that you need, the drop time that you need to have before you sell the product. So you cannot use anesthetic if you are close to the slaughter time. But you know, normally you have in legislation a list of drugs that you can use, and anesthetic also. So I know that you cannot use phenoxyethanol, for example, if you are aiming to slaughter your fish, but you can use another anesthetics already available on the market that have quite low withdrawal periods. So and normally this is a regular practice.
Okay, brilliant, thanks. So we've got time probably just for one more question. And that is, thank you for the talk. What lines of research or work exist today on the welfare of intensively produced fish used to feed carnivorous fish, which are then produced for human consumption?
Yes, honestly, I know that this is a big question about feed fish with fish that so we need to catch some fish to produce more fish, especially in carnivore species. And nowadays, the industry is trying to find some alternatives, and you can see the insect meal, for example, some soya also that will be used to formulate some feeds. And nowadays you can have almost feed without using fish meal. Fish oil, it's more difficult, but fish meal, you have quite a lot options. And the thing is that you can use the byproducts of the fish for fisheries, because if not, you will not use it. And for me, I know that you hear about a lot of criticisms about the aquaculture industry in relation to fish meal and fish oil, and this is true. But the thing is that what about welfare in fisheries? This we don't have it at all. Because if you go to a fishery boat, I don't have anything good to say about this. And about aquaculture, I have a lot of things that I can say that they are doing, and they are trying to improve the industry.
Thank you. That's interesting. Okay, I think that brings us to time, but thank you so much, Maria, for such an interesting presentation and for answering those questions so thoroughly as well. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions. I'm sorry that we didn't have a chance to get to all of them, but hopefully we can forward those on to Maria. And as I mentioned before, these talks will all be uploaded to the YouTube channel. So any outstanding questions we'll try and address on there. So please do, we've got an hour now to take a little lunch break. Please do join us at 1:30 GMT, so in 1 hour's time, for the rest of our talks for today. But all that's left to say is thank you again so much, Maria, for joining us.
Thank you so much. And if someone wants to send me an email, I'm much more than happy to reply directly to the questions, okay?
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. Well, we can share that information with our viewers. So thank you ever so much, and nice to meet you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.